And welcome everyone to another Smart Money Circle episode. I'm Adam Sarhan. With me today is Robert Quartermain, who's the CEO, President, and Vice Chairman at Dakota Gold Corp. Ticker symbol is DC. Bob, thank you so much for taking the time and welcome to the Smart Money Circle.
Great, Adam. Great to be here today. Thank you.
So, Bob, I always like to begin. Can you please tell us your story and how you got to where you are today?
Right. So I'm a professional geologist by training. I did my undergraduate in the University of New Brunswick, have a master's in Queens in mineral exploration, and spent much of the early part of my career doing all the jobs in the industry. I worked in the Northwest Territories of Canada, living in a tent for 4 years, doing prospecting. I then went and worked at the Lamaque Gold Mine. I joined Teck Corporation, worked at the David Bell Mine. So I ended up getting good underground experience because I thought throughout my career, if I was going to be an exploration geologist and look to find mines, then I should know what they look like. So working at a few mines was helpful. I then took over a company called Silver Standard, and over a 25-year period, we grew it from $2 million to over $2 billion. Had a number of projects around the world, created lots of value for shareholders in that regard, and had my experience working in Africa. We worked in Latin America, particularly in Argentina, with the Manantial Espejo project. We built the Perquitas mine. And after 25 years, in 2010, I retired. And Silver Standard had an asset in it called the Bruce Jack project, which I quite liked. They sold it. And so in 2010, I went out and raised the $400 million to buy it. And then over the course of a few years, we put together a crew of up to 2,000 people working up the mine site. And from 2010 to 2017, in an extremely quick period, we put the project in production, and it became Canada's fourth largest gold mine. And it
Wow.
was sold a few years ago from Pretium to Newmont for a little close to $3 billion. And so my focus has been as a technical geologist, but creating shareholder value in the gold space. And of course, that's brought me to South Dakota into the historic Homestake District, where there's been no exploration or significant work done there since the 1990s. And the district itself has produced an exceedingly amount of gold, over 45 million ounces between the old Homestake mine and the adjacent Wharf mine. So lots of opportunity in gold. That's where I've done my career these last almost 40 years, 45 years. And it's been a great journey. And we have much more to go with all-time gold high prices.
Wow, that is a fantastic story, Bob. Thank you so much for sharing it. I love the fact that you started off as a geologist and you moved to business, scaled business, multiple businesses. You've done this many times, and you had this foresight at such a young age to say, "Hey, listen, I need to work in a mine so I could see what mines look like." I think that's absolutely brilliant, especially for somebody in your position. The last person I spoke to that had that transition from geologist to business successful person was T. Boone Pickens way back when. And I love the story. So okay, this makes me even more excited. So Bob, please tell us about Dakota and all the fun things you have going on there.
Right. So Dakota Gold is based in South Dakota and in the Homestake District. As I pointed out, it's been continuously mining gold since 1878. So over 45 million ounces have been produced, 40 million ounces at the Homestake mine itself, and then another 5 million ounces or 4 million and change at the adjacent Wharf mine. And it's been operating for now 40 years. So you've got a great location in a secure state, which is favorable towards mining. It's been going on for a long time. It generates great jobs in the state. And we've got a couple of projects in Dakota Gold. First is our Maitland project, which is a long strike of the old Homestake mine. We've done drilling on it and have been very fortunate to actually intersect Homestake mineralization. So we know it occurs outside the old mine, and that's a long-term optionality for us. Our shorter term and more exciting project right now is Richmond Hill. We have the largest resource of any junior company in gold in the United States right now. We announced an SK 1300 resource in February this year, came up with our large kind of at surface oxide, close to 6 million ounce resource. And we're now doing an IA with cash flow, which is an initial assessment with cash flow, and moving into feasibility. So again, we're in a mining jurisdiction and we're catching gold price at the all-time highs.
I love that. And of course, as miners make money, the spread between the price of gold and the cost of coming out of the ground. I would like to know a little bit about that, if you don't mind educating the audience a little bit on the economics, if you will, of how the business works.
Right. So with the gold mineralization that we discover in the rocks, we have to go in and basically mine and use dynamite, take the material, we crush it up into, perhaps a smaller size. We'll work on the optimum size and maybe the size of an inch in size. Sometimes it could actually be run of mine as you blast it, but in this case, we think we'll have to crush it. And then you spread cyanide over it, you leach the gold out, you collect the cyanide, take the gold out, and you have a closed system. So that's how most mines work. They're able to get their gold, whether it's through a milling process or heap leach process. We're looking here. In the case of the Maitland project, which is underground, which is longer term, we would do the same, where you crush it up and basically leach the material up. But for Richmond Hill, it'll be at surface. And for those of your listeners and subscribers who may be from South Dakota or are familiar with the Wharf mine, will be very similar to what they're doing. Basically mining it, heap leaching it, and then extracting the gold and creating good long-term jobs in South Dakota.
I love that. Well, fantastic. Thank you for that explanation. So let's talk about risk management. What are some mistakes you see people make with respect to risk, and how do you learn from them or avoid them?
Right. Well, I've been fortunate, I say, in my 45-year career, and have been involved in 7 mine builds around the world, both in North America, in Canada, both open pit as well as underground. We had an open pit mine down in Argentina, and then the high-grade Brucejack underground. And so, as I pointed out, because of getting that underground experience and understanding, what you need to do with the mine, so often the way I like to look at it is you think about what the mine wants to look like when you start mining it, and then play it backwards. And so you mitigate risk by, one, hiring good people. You bring on people who are very skilled in order to have the competencies that you need as you look at the various aspects of the development program. It could be the drilling, which you're undertaking. You've got to do your environmental, your permitting work. And so you want to go through and mitigate that as much as you can. Of course, you need good social license. That's necessary nowadays. If you're going to be having a mine operating in and around a town or a city, as we would in Lead, then we want to make sure that everyone is aware of what you're doing. So good communication is needed for that. So, as I say, in the case of the Brucejack mine, from discovery to production was 7 years, which meant we had to go through and mitigate all the risks. Usually it can take 14 or 15 years to be able to have that timeline. But having that experience and an experienced team, we can sit down, look at all the risks that we have, and we prepare a risk chart, look at the ones which are perhaps near term, longer term, and then you go through and mitigate them with your team, and then make sure you have those conversations. So it's something that we as professionals in the resource business can do as we have a development opportunity, and something I've practiced throughout my career, and we certainly practice here in Dakota Gold.
So if I understand you properly, you're mitigating that risk. This way you can avoid stumbling along the way and then hopefully help you maximize the return as you move forward. Is that a good way to summarize it?
For sure, because you have the time value of money, right? If you're going to go borrow, in the case of Brucejack, close to $600 million, you want to be able to return that money back. So you want to make sure that what you build, you can put in production quick. The same with what we would expect. This operation would be a smaller capital cost in that, but you want to be able to mitigate it. And by closing that gap and ensuring that from the time you raise the money to put a project in production until you're cash flowing, you want that to be as quick as you can make it. And you're right, you mitigate all of those along the way.
I love that. Thank you for explaining. So next question for you, Bob. You've been around for decades. You've survived up boom and bear markets, and you've seen it all. So what are some timeless lessons you've learned that you'd like to share with the audience?
First, I think is work with the right people. Ensure that the team that you put together, if you're going to be involved in a project, are individuals who have the competencies that you need and work together well as a team. I mean, that's what mine is about. It's a team effort. You want to make sure everyone is safe working at the mine. And so when I started with Silver Standard, I started with one employee, and 30 years later, when we were doing Pretium, he was still around, as were minis. We created a really good collegiate environment. So, I think success comes from creating a respectful environment where people can come in and look at their competencies. And then it's also being able to stay this course. Make sure that when you're looking at a project, you've got good science behind you. I mean, that's what mining is about. It's about taking a resource you identify in the ground and putting materials handling around it. You have to make sure your first scientific estimates are solid, because that ultimately will lead to the profitability of your mine. And so good foundational science, good people, and they can create good outcomes for shareholders.
I love that. And then how about the flip side of that? What are some timeless mistakes either you've made, you've seen other people make, and how do you learn or avoid them?
Right. In that case, it's about jurisdiction. That's often where I've had some problems. You could be working in a foreign jurisdiction where perhaps political governments will change, and with them, they may change their attitudes. So you want to make sure your project is properly capitalized to be able to maybe look at changes in taxation. It's also what, of course, in the latter part of my career had me come back to Canada, both to the Brucejack project and to now working in South Dakota. You want to work in jurisdictions where you have a rule of law and know what you're able to do. So I would say one thing is when you're in a foreign jurisdiction, you just have to look and get that kind of a lens on what's going on with respect to the political side of it. And then you want to look at whatever, local communities. You can run into problems there where you may have one local community could be in favor of a project, another one may not be, and that can take longer time. So it's about good communication, but ensuring, again, that you do that basic groundwork in order to have a successful project.
Got it. And then what about leadership? You've led several companies. What makes a great leader? And what are some lessons you've learned about leadership that you'd like to share with the audience?
But I think leadership comes around to bringing out the best in the people that work for you, right? You bring people on because they have a competency and you want to make sure they have a voice. Over my career, when I first started running Silver Standard back in the 1980s, we would have Tuesday morning management meetings with everyone in the office, which when we first started was 5 or 6 people. To this day, we still have those meetings that you bring in. Everyone has the competency. We talk about what we're trying to achieve. You hear from everyone, and then you make an informed decision. I mean, that's what leadership is about. It's not top-down direction, but it's being informed by those who are the decision makers, those who have the expertise, listening to their expertise that can inform a successful outcome, and then being able to implement it. And we're very fortunate in Dakota Gold because we have many individuals who've been working in South Dakota for much of their careers, are familiar with the deposits we have. And it's about having them have a voice, being able to give their expertise, and then from that, making collective decisions to go forward. And so mine's often been a very collaborative leadership style. And in the case of Silver Standard and Pretium, it's rewarded not only the outcome of the mine, but shareholders have invested as well.
Love that. So let's talk about obstacles and adversity. How do you handle adversity, and what are some obstacles you had to overcome along the way?
Well, adversity is being able to see what the challenges are and then being to analyze them and then looking at what can be kind of the best outcome to be able to get a success. And sometimes you're not able to do that. I mean, some of the obstacles I had years ago, we operated a project in Russia and we had our local partners. And ultimately, we got to a position where we just weren't able to cooperate together going forward. And so we had to remove ourselves from that. The lesson learned is ensure going forward, whenever you have a business partner, make sure it's someone who's aligned with you, has the right strategic outcome. And I would say since that episode some 25 years ago, certainly with the success of Silver Standard and the success of Pretium, have been able to do it. So it's looking when these challenges come up. Often they can be in foreign jurisdictions, and looking and make sure you engage and have good conversations and good dialogue and talk about what's in the best interest collectively to get the best outcome that you can. And so whenever an adversity or challenge comes up, that's what we do now, assess it, and then find a good positive outcome that's good for the company and good for your shareholders as well.
I love that. So what happens is when you get thrown a curveball, that adversity inevitably comes up along the way. You'll never know where it comes from. But what you're saying is just stay calm, assess it, find the solution, and then move forward in that regard instead of trying to live in the past and beat yourself
Right.
up. Emotional.
Right.
Yeah, that's really smart.
Right. Yeah. As soon as something occurs, I mean, as a scientist, it's about getting the data. There can be emotion around the time, but you're being able to try to move through that, find out what the issue is, determine what the best solution may be for all the stakeholders involved in the issue, and then be able to go advance it forward and then communicate that as to what you're plan to do and ensure that you get alignment with all the stakeholders who may be involved in a positive outcome.
Gotcha. So let me go back and ask you a question about the Silvercore company when you started with that one employee who stayed with you along the way. When that business was started, I'm assuming it was exploration as well before you actually found anything and it grew from there? Or what was that trajectory?
Yep. No, that would have been back in 1990 when Silver Standard, I'd been working at it for 5 years, and we had I think, a 3 or 4 million market cap. And Ken McNaughton was kind of the first employee to come on full time, another individual working, Max Holtby, with me. And we went through the 25 years of Silver Standard, grew it. And then when we moved over and started Pretium, they both came over and worked for it. So we were able to create two multi-billion-dollar companies by having some key individuals who you could trust. They have their competencies, and it allowed me to go off and do what I'm doing today, which is get out and talk about the opportunity we have in the company. And you've got people in the office working to make sure that the appropriate things are being done, as we do with Dakota Gold. And so getting those individuals, having the trust in them to be able to deliver on their competencies, then allows one to be able to create an environment where people want to stay and work and enjoy it. And I say, in one case, people working for 25 years in one and almost 10 in the next company. So it was very fulfilling in that regard, that we're able to start as a few individuals with companies a few $1,000,000 and see it grow into billions of dollars of value and create very good wealth for our shareholders.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So you've seen this movie before and you've done it before multiple times. At Dakota now, that exploration, a few hundred million market cap, you could scale it to several billion. And that's a clear, in your mind's eye, that's a clear path. That's a good way of summarizing it.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
because we
Gotcha.
now have a resource that we outlined in February of this year with the SK 1300. We have a resource very similar to the adjacent Wharf mine. And last year, they produced about 100,000 ounces and generated $100 million of free cash flow because it's very profitable, ounces are looking at. So we're next door, the same type of geology, only a few miles away, and the same type of operation which we would see. And if your listeners and subscribers go on our website and look at our corporate presentation, in one of our slides, I believe it's 17, we show that comparison. If you're a 100,000 ounce a year producer right now in these gold prices in the United States, your market cap or your value to your corporation for that production is somewhere between 800 million and $1 billion in value. So that's what we can ascribe to by delivering on the feasibility work, the baseline work, the permitting work. We are on private land in the United States in South Dakota, and then doing the financing you need for it. And as I pointed out when I ran Pretium, Orion Mine Finance provided us with $540 million of mine finance. They've also agreed to provide us up to $300 million for financing now. So all we have to do is execute, and that's the great opportunity. We have a gold resource with definable parameters around it. We're doing AI with cash flow into feasibility study. And as you say, taking it on that trajectory, that as you go from exploration development into production, is where you capture the most value for shareholders along that curve.
That's exciting. That's extremely exciting. All right, thank you very much for clarifying that because I love finding patterns when I interview people or speak with people,
Right.
and me that jumped out at me when you said it earlier, and then it linked it back towards the end. All right, Bob, final question for you. What is the best piece of advice you'd like to give the audience or give your 30-year-old self?
Right. Well, 30-year-old self would be patience. When I was 30-year-old, I wanted to get somewhere, and now in hindsight, we did get there. And so have the patience to go along, do good science, make sure that the underlying assets, that's what mining is about. You have an underlying rock, you're going to crush it, you're going to extract metal from it, and you're going to do it safely. You got to find the best way to do it safely and one that's environmentally friendly. You want to minimize the impact on the environment in that way. So, for investors, the way I do myself, invest in teams, invest in those individuals in our space who've done it before. There are some who are serial mine finders, where they take exploration on, they are able to build companies, and you want to see people have been able to do it. And the fact that some of them are now in their 70s are still doing it. So it's about doing your research, finding good quality assets in good jurisdictions and good people. And that's a success to be able to make money in this industry.
I love it. Well, Bob, thank you so much. I had a friend tell me the other day, 70 is the new 50 for what that's worth. So
Good. Well, I'm 50 again.
you know it. All right, Bob. Thank you so much. And hopefully we'll have you on again soon. This was absolutely
Great.
fantastic.
Thank you, Adam.